Hi, I'm Chelsea. I'm the founder of Friday Pattern Company, and today we're going to be doing the sew along video for the Collins dress and top pattern. The Collins dress and top pattern is our newest pattern. We just released it last week, and we have a video up that has all of the information about the pattern. We talk about fabric, we talk about the models and what sizes they're wearing and some of that stuff. So if you want more details, you can watch that video. And then in this video, we're gonna go step by step through the sewing process from start to finish. And I will be sewing the top view, which I'm actually wearing right now. It turned out great. If you're sewing the dress view, the sewing steps are exactly the same. Your side seams will just be a little bit longer. So yeah, I think that is about it. We can jump right into it. It's a quick and satisfying sew. So there's a few techniques in there that make it so that the insides get finished really nicely and it all comes together in a fun way. So yeah, I'm excited. So here I just want to show you some of the supplies we have. This is the fabric I'm going to use, and you need to make sure that it has at least 25% stretch that I got from Lyrical Fabrics. I've got matching thread. I have stretch sewing machine needles. These help out your machine when you're sewing with knits. The edge of the needle is like a little bit more rounded, so it punches through the loops in the fabric a little bit easier. This is the elastic that I chose for the waistband on the shelf bra. You can choose something that is going to feel comfortable on your skin, and I like an elastic that has like a lot of soft stretch, nothing too rigid when it's up around my waist. So this is actually fold over lingerie elastic, and any elastic is suitable. So yeah, this is what I had, and that would be good. You can use like a plush back elastic or like a stretch lace or anything. This is an optional notion. This is 3/8 inch wide clear elastic that I'm going to use to stabilize some of the seams, and I just wanted to show you that in the sew along. This is a nifty thing to have, but it is not necessary. The other thing we mention in the instructions is having a walking foot can be helpful. That's another optional thing. My sewing machine has a built-in walking foot, so that is also in the mix. So after you cut out your pattern pieces, you're just going to snip in at all of the notches. So notches are these little lines on your pattern pieces that are like reference points and matching points, and you just snip in at each of them. And then just be aware that on some of the pieces there's a notch at center back or notch at center front, and I always denote them when they're hard to see with like a little arrow or something. So just snip in at all the notches. Okay, so here I have my front shelf bra piece, and I'm just going to join it to my back shelf bra piece at these shoulder seams. Flip this around. So we're going to match up these shoulder seams. This is actually the first step that we're going to use our clear elastic. So I'm just going to cut little pieces along here. This clear elastic stabilizes the seam, while if you have stretch fabric that wants to like kind of blow out, this helps just like hold the seam in place and gives it a little bit more strength. And it's 3/8 of an inch, which is basically our seam allowance. So I'm just clipping that in with our other 2 layers of fabric. And this step is the same. We're going to do this with our shelf bra pieces, and then we're also going to do it with our front and back pieces. So our main body pieces, I'm just showing you with the shelf bra because it's smaller and it's easier to see on camera. So I'm going to take this to the sewing machine, and I'm going to sew it with the clear elastic up. Using a zigzag stitch, I'm just going to stitch 3/8 of an inch from the edge on both of these, and then I'm going to repeat with the front and back main pieces. Okay, so here we are at the sewing machine. I have my zigzag stitch set on my machine, and then I've got the clear elastic up. I'm just going to set up my seam at 3/8 of an inch. You can hold the elastic taut if you want, but we're not gathering in using the elastic. That's something people sometimes do with clear elastic. We're just using this to stabilize. So we're gonna hold it taut, but we're not going to pull. So there you can see it's sewn into the seam, and it just gives it a little bit more body. So here I have my AB front and back pieces, my main fabric, facing right side up. And after I sewed those seams, I pressed the seams, shoulder seams on both of these forward. And then here's my shelf bra that I'm going to align right sides together, pieces C and D with, this way, on top, matching up the neckline. And I have pressed the seams towards the back on the shelf bra pieces, and that is called nesting your seam allowances so that there's less bulk. You know, if they were both going one direction, it would be really bulky in this one way, and then this way it'll lay a little bit flatter. So what we're going to do, and we'll use clear elastic in this step as well if you're using it. One thing, when you're using this, it does make pressing a little bit more challenging because you're going to need to press at a slightly lower temperature, and obviously don't bring your iron in contact with the plastic or it might melt. You're going to want to like test your settings with your iron and how hot it is to make sure you're not, you know, melting plastic all over the place. But just something to consider. So I'm just going to, also it's helpful to give yourself a little bit of a tail of the clear elastic at the beginning. So I'm matching up this shoulder seam, and then I'm just going to pin down. You've got notches at center back that match up on your shelf bra and your main fabric. Okay, so now we're going to take this to the sewing machine. We're going to sew 3/8 of an inch from the edge going all the way around. So here's that seam sewn, and now we are either going to clip this curve or trim it very close to the seam allowance. People have different preferences on this method. It's up to you what feels good for you and also what feels good for your fabric. I think for this, I'm just going to trim close to the seam allowance, going around the neckline. Okay, so here we have our neckline sewn and then trimmed down, and now we're going to flip it right side out. So I'm just pulling this shelf bra through. We're going to flip it right side out and give it a really good press going around the neckline. And there you have it. Okay, so here's the fun part where we use the burrito method to finish both of these arm sides really neatly. And we do it one side at a time. So how it works is, what you're looking at is the right side of pieces A and B, the main front and back, and then I've got my shelf bra underneath here. So I've got it laid out flat, and I'm just going to roll it up from one side so that it's sitting on top of one arm side. And then I can open up this and bring it around that rolled up bit. And there you can see we are matching up our arm side again, and then we have our rolled up project on the inside. And I'm going to pin, make sure that so there's my things, and I've got this needs to be folded out of the way so it doesn't get caught in this seam. And then I'm just matching up. Dun, dun. I'm matching up this arm side, and I am matching up the shoulder seams and the underarm seams. So your project is rolled up in here, and you're just sewing through 2 layers, 3/8 of an inch from the edge. Make sure the rolled up part of your project is does not get caught in this seam. I have that sewn, and now I'm just going to, like I did with the neckline, I'm just trimming really close to the seam without trimming through it. We are going to pull our project right side out through And you want to do this little by little because if you try to pull a huge chunk out, it sometimes gets jammed in there. But if you do it slowly. So now this arm side is finished nicely with no visible seams, and then this one is still raw. So we have our finished edge, our edge that still needs to be finished, and we're just going to roll our project up towards the unfinished side till it's sitting on top of that shoulder, and then we'll wrap the arm side around. You could pull the bottom under or pull the top around. So there, now it's open, and then we're enclosing that little rolled up bit. And then we'll pin that just like we did the last one. And then we'll stitch this using our 3/8 inch seam allowance. Okay, so now I have stitched that and trimmed it close to the seam allowance, and I'm going to pull it right side out. This is an exciting moment, little by little. And it magically finishes both arm sides. If you're like, uh-oh, it's twisted, it's not. You just have to pull your shirt through the neckline until it's untwisted. So now we've got this beautiful neckline, 2 beautiful arm sides. We'll give these a good press, and then we will move on to the side seams and hem, and we're almost done making our collins. Okay, so here is my project. And now we are going to sew up our side seams. So I'm matching up the side seams of my shelf bra and my front and back. And they're going to be sewn, so this is the side seam for the shelf bra, and this is the side seam for the top. And as you can see, the front pieces are longer for both the shelf bra and the front, main front. They're longer than the back pieces, and that is because we are pulling them in around the bust. So you have these 2 notches here on your side seam, here, they're right here, and they're right here. So we're pulling the back to the length of the front between those notches. So we'll match up, we're going to start, and we're doing this all in one go. So I'm going to match up the hems of the shelf bra, and I'm matching front to back here, and then this notch, and then this notch, these notches are going to match up, and then these notches are going to match up. As you can see, there's excess fabric there for the front, so we're pulling the back as we sew so that it matches the same length as the front, and then the seam will settle in and give you more space for your bust. When you're doing a pattern that is for knits that has negative ease, meaning like the chest area is smaller than your actual chest measurements, then I'll check this underarm seam, sorry. Matching a notch. When you have negative ease like that, you can add extra length in and space for a round chest by pulling in, adding extra length to the front and pulling it in on the back. And so then this side seam matches up, and we're matching up the hems of our front pieces, front to back, and you shouldn't have to stretch. You're only stretching between those notches. So yeah, that's how we're adding more ease to the front so that there's space for a round chest. And if you're sewing the BC cup versus the CD cup, the front will be a little bit longer. So if your fabric doesn't want to stretch as much as this length, you can always add a gathering stitch here, a long gathering stitch, and then pull it in to gather it in rather than stretching. That works as well. But I'm going to stretch as I sew. I find that easiest to do. So I'm going to take this to the sewing machine, and we'll be sewing 3/8 of an inch from the edge, and when we get to these places, we're stretching as we sew. So I'm sewing up my side seam, and I'm approaching my first notch, and I'm just going to sew right up to it, And then I'll lower my needle, and then this is where I need to stretch as I sew. So I'm just kind of pulling it in between these notches, pulling the back taut so that the front can lay flat. And I'm stitching up to my next notch. Cool. And then I'm past that, so I don't need to stretch anymore until I get to the next notch. And here we are. So again, I'm just lowering my needle and I'm pulling. And then I'm stitching to the hem of the shelf bra. So I've repeated that process on both side seams, and this is what our project looks like right now. As you can see, you get this little like gathering along the bust line, and then it's flat. Same with the shelf bra, and yeah, it looks a little bit confusing, but if you just pull the shelf bra down, you can see how it is shaping up into a really lovely little shirt. So now we're going to add the elastic to the hem of the shelf bra, and there are suggested elastic measurements in the instructions for your size, and you can also just kind of wrap your elastic around you and see how it feels around your rib cage where it's going to sit, and then take that measurement with your elastic and then add about an inch so that they can overlap. So I'm going to cut my elastic now. Okay, so here's my elastic, and I'm just pulling the two ends over each other in a loop, overlapping these by about 1/2 inch and making sure this is not twisted anywhere. And then I'm just going to use my zigzag stitch to stitch this into a loop. Okay, there we go. It's not the prettiest thing in the world, but I've got that secured in a loop. Okay, so now we're going to divide our elastic into quarters, and you can do this with a marking pen, but to make it easier to see on camera, and also because my elastic is black, I figured it would be easy to just add pins at the quarter marks. So I'm using this back seam as my first point of reference, and then I'm folding out from there to find the other half. I'm going to add a pin. So there I have 2 pins. Now I'm going to match up those 2 pins at the center to find these 2 other quadrants. So now I have my elastic divided into 4 equal parts, and I'm going to pin it to the shelf bra hem. Okay, so here is my here's my top, and it's inside out, but we've got the right side of our shelf bra facing up. And I'm going to start by putting the elastic on. And we're just overlapping the edge of the elastic by 1/4 inch on the raw edge. So sometimes elastic is sewn where we would go like this and stitch, and then we would fold it down. But this adds more bulk on this waist seam, which we want to avoid. So we're just placing basically the right side of your elastic facing up with the right side of your shelf bra facing up. I'm matching this first quadrant with this center front notch. I'm just overlapping the elastic by about 1/4 inch and pinning it. So that looks like on the back. The next pin is going to match up with the side seam. I elected to have my elastic pretty loose. I guess I can use the pin. Because I'm pregnant right now and I don't want it squishing my rib cage, and my boobs are more than capable of holding down the shelf bra. So depending on how tight you make yours, you're going to have more stretch here when you're sewing, because your elastic will be a little bit shorter than the length of your shelf bra. So that, depending on how long or short you make it, you'll have more or less to pull. But that's kind of what we're looking at. And then I'm just flipping it around. And make sure that you're only pinning your shelf bra and your elastic in this, and that your main fabric is there, but it's out of the way, not getting pinned. And then this is your center back I'm matching this quadrant up with this center back notch, and then this side seam with this quadrant. Okay, so now I'm going to sew this at the machine. You can add some extra pins in here if you want to hold it in place. I think it's easier to do this as I'm sewing because we're stretching a little, and I just want to make sure that everything, the ease of the elastic is evenly distributed around the hem of the shelf bra. So I'm going to do that as I sew. So I'm using a zigzag stitch, and I'm just lining up the elastic as I sew and flattening out the fabric underneath. And then my zigzag stitch kind of just straddles the edge of the elastic. And you'll keep sewing all the way around. I'll show you what that is looking like so far. So here is that finished, and all we have left to do is the hem. Okay, so now we're just going to press the hem edge under 3/8 of an inch, going all the way around the hem. When I'm sewing with knits that want to roll like this, I like to use clips when I'm pressing my hem. Use a lot of them to really like hold it in place. So just kind of work your way around. Okay, so now I'm going to take this to the sewing machine and sew 3/8 of an inch from the edge. So we'll just be overlapping this raw edge with a zigzag stitch, sewing all the way around to finish the hem. Okay, so here I have it hemmed, and you can see what that looks like. So that's hemmed, and then our shirt is done. So easy, right? Okay, so here is the finished top. I made a size large. I'm about 8.5 months pregnant right now, and I didn't do any sort of like modifications for pregnancy per se, just sized up to a size large. I would normally make a size medium, and I think if you wanted to, you could lengthen it a little bit, but I don't really mind. I like kind of having my belly out, so this is the finished top. I hope you enjoyed this sew along, and feel free to leave any questions in the comments down below. And I'm leaving on maternity leave now, so I'll see you guys next year.